It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. Today, I'm bringing you an amazing leader. Amy LaGrant is leading the marketing and gerontology professional with over 20 years of experience helping brands connect with baby boomers, seniors, and family caregivers. Amy has led leadership roles in some of the industry's leading marketing agency. Today, she owns her own brand marketing agency, brand and marketing agency focusing on products and services that serve our seniors and the caregiving market. Her company is called BrandMETTLE. From the moment Amy and I started connecting, this spoke to me on a very personal basis, as my mom is a senior and she is dealing with a lot of just what we're talking about. So welcome, Amy, and thank you for, on a personal level, thank you for doing this work you're doing.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be able to share my story today.
So let's start with the backstory of how did you get into this? I'm asking Amy, he's like, gerontology, you're a gerontologist. What is this? Help me.
Well, ironically, that was a very similar question that my dad asked when I started down my career as him being an operation and businessman. He was like, Gero, what? How are you going to make a living? And so I actually—
And I'm a true parent. I've been asked that question many times in my life.
Dad's like, all right, what are we going to do here? So I actually started at a very young age. Whenever I introduce myself, I always make the joke that I was a gerontologist at 9 years old. I really fell in love with seniors at a young age. I didn't necessarily have grandparents, but I volunteered a lot and actually ended up working in an adult day center at the age of 9, and was surrounded by people who have dementia and seniors, and really enjoyed that work. And had an opportunity.
That's impressive for a young person.
Yes, I do have a story about, we'll share for another day, of one of my first skilled nursing or nursing home experiences at the ripe old age of 11, that I think pretty much you would, if you heard that story, would wonder why I ever ended up here. But what I really did enjoy was really getting to understand seniors from a completely different perspective. And what it allowed me to be able to do is use that experience as I got older. And I actually went to school and found gerontology, and did the same thing you did, was looking through things and then Googling gerontology what? And really fell in love with this social science. So gerontology is the study of aging. And we know that aging starts from birth until you die. That's pretty much, aging. And gerontology takes a tilt on that and really focuses on kind of that effects of aging as you get older. Geriatrician is a physician that is focused on people, geriatrics, focused on older people. A gerontologist is somebody who is a social science. So they're looking at all of the elements around culture, societal norms, marketing and advertising, any of those things that come into play in how does our society react to aging, and what does the environment that we're living in and how we are living affect how we age. And so that's really where gerontology comes into play. And I fell in love with many different elements of gerontology. In my career, I did everything from working at a senior living community. I actually worked in policy for a little bit. And I fell in love with this idea of kind of going against how aging is represented in media, in our society. And where I found that love was in marketing and advertising. Really realizing—
It's so interesting, my background going back 100 years, so to speak, running a printing company, I worked with marketing and advertising departments. And the one thing I would never think of, and this is where I was so intrigued and I was so excited for this interview, is thinking about this senior living and as we age in seniors and the marketing and advertising around that, because it was like, oh, we're going to get old. That sucks. In lack of a better phrase of where are we, taking that as a marketing perspective. And you and your partner have built a full agency around this and are thriving, which is beautiful.
Yeah, and we really are focusing on that element that you're talking about, is making sure that we are representing these people authentically and empathetically, I think, is another way that we look at it, and really making sure to elevate that. Because I think as a society, I think we discount that just because the physical attributes may not be what we necessarily think as beautiful, and so I love to kind of bring in what has been evolving as you age. And while, there are elements of aging that we all don't love, there are other parts of aging that I think we do embrace, that idea that we become more comfortable in our own skin. We really truly identify who we are as human beings and where our place is. And then we kind of remove some of the chatter that we hear around us as our wisdom evolves. And so we really work to try to elevate that in our marketing communications and how we work with clients.
So in I know COVID has helped you shift.
Mm-hmm.
So share a little bit more, about that experience. I mean, it was going through a global pandemic was a rude awakening for every age point that had repercussions on a variety of levels. Yeah. Where did you see this hit as far as the senior community, and how you shift how did you shift your agency and why?
Right. Well, we actually did do a significant pivot. We, working in the senior space, everybody knows from what was on the news, a lot of our clients were kind of in the thick of it as it relates to what was happening with COVID. So we did when we were in lockdown and during COVID, we were working very much with our clients to be able to pivot and still keep some of their marketing activities. But kind of post-COVID, what we also saw is the amount of marketing people that were kind of leaving the field. And there was a lack of senior level marketing people, especially in the categories that we were working with. A lot of people had moved on, have decided, that they needed another life path. The great resignation marketing was hit pretty extensively by that. And so what we did was we kind of moved a little bit to this fractional CMO model, where we actually go in and work with companies that are focused in this senior caregiving age tech space. And we actually serve as a CMO. And so we go in and help with their brand strategy. A lot of these companies are struggling necessarily financially, so they can't necessarily hire that. But what we also noticed is nobody had necessarily the experience to be able to help these companies activate quickly and recover quickly. And so what we did was we moved into these roles, and we actually worked with marketing teams that they had in their organizations, whether or not they were junior level marketing people, or whether or not they were using some external resources. And we helped them kind of bring that inside. And then majority of their marketing team was actually reporting up to us. And we supported that team. We actually built succession planning for them in that team. We were training up a lot of those teams, and then implementing strategic marketing strategy, having a seat at the C-suite level for board meetings and to drive strategic initiatives as it relates to marketing to the CEO. And what it allowed us to be able to do is activate very quickly with our clients, because we were at that table. And it allowed us to be able to make decisions quickly in order to allow for some of that marketing recovery to happen very fast. And so our clients have seen really great success with that. And it's been very rewarding for myself to just see that.
So, I love staying in the pulse of business during any change or shift, and then moving in a leadership role of doing it per what the environment, right, is dictating, right? The environment business gives us this insight, and we have a choice whether we look at it, and then we have the second choice of, are we going to take action? And I love that you guys just truly ran with this. You saw a hole in the space you were already in, and you stepped in. Did anything surprise you in this journey? I'm always curious about that, because I jump in with things on 2 feet, and then we continue to analyze like what's working, what's not. And so I'm always curious, like, what surprises came your way from this?
Well, actually, I was thinking about this last night, ironically. And one surprise is a lot of companies are like, oh, I don't know if I want to bring an external person into the organization, because I don't know if they're necessarily going to feel like they're part of us. And I will tell you, the surprising thing to me is, because I also kind of was like, okay, is this going to work? Am I going to be able to get into the culture? And I will tell you, the CEOs of the organizations that I work with have embraced wholeheartedly our seat at the table, and really bring us in as if we were full-time with them. And I don't see any hesitation in them around, this is an external person. I just don't even think they see us that way. And it's been really nice to see that. I was kind of surprised that there still wouldn't be, some little bit of a wall, because you're working in the agency world for so long, you're always like, this is the client, this is the agency. And with this model, the melding of that is pretty phenomenal. And so that's been really great, because personally, it's allowed me to be much more effective. And it has helped the CEOs to feel like they truly have somebody that's just taking care of that part of the business. And so that's been kind of surprising that there wasn't more of that kind of separation, which I'm very happy about. But it was a little bit something that I was like, oh, it's
and it's great because it creates a win-win. It
completely.
really creates a win-win between the organization, on a lower overhead in their marketing, people budget, so to speak, as well as truly getting that outside professional perspective and your vast knowledge on the whole scope in the marketing space and the senior space. I love a good win-win.
Exactly, right. Yes.
So tell me, your vision for what's happening next in being real. You and I have spoke very openly about our own parents. My mom is living with a disease called Lewy body disease, which is a form of dementia. And we're seeing seniors live longer. So when we're looking at the senior services and the marketing there, what are we seeing in that whole space?
Well, I'll share a little bit. I think we had discovered also that we have Lewy bodies dementia in common as well. My father passed away from Lewy bodies dementia in the end of 2020. And so to answer that first question of what's next, so one of the things that I've been doing professionally is also out on the speaker circuit. One of the things that I have a great passion for is also talking about the stigma around caregiving, especially dementia caregiving, and sharing my personal story of having a father who had dementia. And
by the way, good for you. Thank you for doing that.
Yes. And then for the business world, I think where we're seeing kind of marketing strategy and all of that developing, and not to get too tactical, but I think one of the things that I think is really important for the marketing strategy is one of the areas that I think a lot of companies kind of fall down on. And I think especially companies that don't necessarily have a lot of work or have done a lot of work or have budgets is around brand work and establishing your brand, and really elevating that. But not necessarily just establishing your brand, but understanding your customer as it relates to brand. One of the things that we hold very dear at BrandMETTLE is consumer insights. Me as a gerontologist, coming from that perspective, we really want to not necessarily just elevate the brand, but elevate the brand in context to the customers that they're trying to serve and making sure that that's hitting. The senior audience is a vast audience. Some people define the senior audience as 50 years old or older. And if you actually think about that, where people are living well into their hundreds, you are talking about possibly 5 decades of people as a market. Well,
that's a massive market.
Well, it's also kind of overwhelming to kind of break down as a marketer, because if you're thinking about a senior market as somebody who's 50 and also as 90, you are dealing with many different elements. And so I've actually developed a framework around how we can look at this audience absent of age and cohort. That's where our default is, I think, with this audience. We're going to just focus on their boomers and they're a certain age. And, I think all of us have examples of 70-year-olds that look very different than 90-year-olds. And sometimes in some cases, the 90-year-old looks better. And so, they made it to 90. So, they know something.
It is so true what you're saying, because I was just with 2 different people at the same age, both 75.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One ran circles around me on a pickleball court, and the other kind of hobbled into a meal. Such different perspectives. And you're right, it is so true. We just, celebrated a family friend's 102nd birthday, and she is with it mentally, again, absolutely, where others I know, many years younger are struggling. So it's very interesting of looking at that senior market. 5 decades is massive. And, marketing, when we talk about it, and you could teach me this, is, how do you niche down? Mm-hmm. Because 5 decades is no niche. You're talking about very different points of life.
Right. Well, we break down the 5 decades prior to 50 very specifically and very niche. And so when we start to get into the older demographics, and I even laugh that we even acknowledge or talk about 50 plus as being an older market. So I think personally, talking to my 80-year-old mother, she probably would state that she's not necessarily somebody who is, quote unquote older. She's like, oh, I don't want to be around all those old people. And, she's, going on 80 here. So it's definitely an opportunity. So we look at everything from life stage as a part of this as well. Also physical ailments, social norms, mental state, all of those things are very different. If you're dealing with somebody who has 5+ chronic conditions, it's very different than somebody who has no chronic conditions whatsoever.
So Amy, what is one tip you could share with us moving forward? One tip on from a marketing perspective for our listeners who might not have known anything like myself today coming in and got so educated, but from our listeners who are looking to learn and grow, and you stepped into an area that is not known, was not a common anything, right? Not commonly known. And what can you share with them to when you have something and your parent says, can you make a living at this? And go and run for it.
Right. Well, I think advice that I would give when we're working through kind of these areas, I think one of the things that I was always very interested in are trends and seeing kind of where the market is going. One thing that I will say for marketing to this audience is you do need to look past age and cohort, as we've been talking about. So that would always be my first advice. And also to understand a little bit more about our audiences. I think because the way they're represented in media and some of the societal norms, we think that people who are older are sick and fragile and very frail. And I will tell you, majority of the senior population is healthy and thriving. And so that would be my advice, is don't necessarily, align yourself to what some of the stereotypes are around these audiences, because they'll surprise you.
I love that. And that is so true.
Exactly.
Amy, I'm going to throw out a huge plug. If this conversation is intriguing to you, or if you actually have people within your family who are seniors and in the senior journey, check out Amy LaGrant's TEDx. And it's TEDx Nashville, I believe.
Yes, it's on the TEDx site on YouTube. You can just Google my name and it should pop right up. And it was an honor to be able to do that TEDx and be able to share my caregiving story. And so anybody who is dealing with communicating with somebody with dementia and trying to create that connection, I tried to come up with some innovative ways to connect with my dad. So thank you for that plug, by the way.
I appreciate it. How can our listeners check you out, learn more about BrandMETTLE as well?
You can definitely go ahead and go to our website, yourbrandmettle.com, and METTLE is spelled METTLE. And you should be able to get right in touch with me from there.
Awesome. And listeners, this is always how I close our show. If you are new to Her Success Story, take a moment and think about what your aha or takeaway is from listening to Amy and I's conversation today. And from that aha or takeaway, make a decision of one action that you're going to take that's meaningful to you. Thank you for joining me here today. Thank you, Amy, for a fabulous guest.
Thank you.
And stay tuned for more wonderful interviews coming up with Her Success Story and great conversations. See you next time.